Hello, I'm Holly Baglio, your hostess with the mostest, broadcasting to you live from Holly Television Studios here in my home state of beautiful New Jersey. Hey, stop. Now you have to sit. Stop. I want my HTV. Excuse me a moment. Yeah, I know. Enough. Stop. I really don't want to hear it right now. Here. Okay, so first things first, I will probably have to re-record the first one because I jumped the gun and I told you the end at the beginning when it came to the blonde, curly-haired boy. And also I still see some corrections that need to be made. But today I'm going to read the second part of my autobiography. I did not want there to be a live chat room when I read it, and I tried to turn it off, but YouTube does not comply. So anyway, please bear with me. I come before Heavenly Abba, and I pray that He speaks through me. I pray that I'm animated. I pray that you hear my autobiography come out in my own voice with my own feelings and emotions. And I pray that everyone enjoys themselves. I pray against any demonic oppression that may come against anyone after they hear or read my autobiography because of the graphic details that I give in it. So this is a huge trigger warning to any MK Ultras. This is a huge trigger warning, this section of my autobiography. So if you are a victim of any kind, SRA, MK Ultra, DID, you might not want to partake in this part of my video, okay? What else can I tell you? So this is my Super Soldier days revisited. And, yeah, I guess I'll just get to reading it. So, deep underground military bases. This is like already a whammy right here. I don't care what you think. You go through it first, and then you come out and tell me how you do it better than I did, and how you do better than I am right now. The first chapter. The first dumb. When I was 3 years old, my biological mother had a falling out. With my grandparents. She used me as a pawn against my grandparents in later years following this event. One day, my biological mother decided to move to San Antonio, Texas. She decided to start a new life and that I was going to come along with her. She took me out of the care of my grandparents. Once in San Antonio, Texas, I have no memory of my biological mother. I believe San Antonio, Texas was the first dump I was in. They took us kids by convoy to the dumps. I remember the flat, dry-looking dirt that did not have grass, but rather shrubs. The sky was beautiful, and the stars seemed brighter than normal. I gazed out the window while the other children slept next to me in the back. Once inside the dump, I recall sitting on the floor with a bunch of other children. To my left was a blonde-haired boy who grew up to be a high-ranking super soldier. There were adults circling around above us children. I'm not able to recall their faces and names at this time. I asked this little boy what the adults were talking about. I asked him what a myth means. He responded, "We are all going to be myths." That is when I learned what a super soldier is. From my understanding, it is a person who has supernatural psychic abilities and spiritual gifts above the average person. At least for my entire life, the military has trained these people to be soldiers. They refer to us as super soldiers. These super soldier projects are involuntary, and we are forced into them. We are programmed, chipped, and surgically enhanced. I have a memory about the process, a few of them. Us children were being electrocuted at the time. They were fracturing our minds, and we would leave our bodies, disassociating ourselves from the pain. They were doing this so we could handle what was thrown at us by means of disassociating. Every time they fractured our minds, it would create a new alter. In other words, a new piece of our personality was broken off, and that is when the programmers would train us. They were doing this so we would become accustomed to handling trauma by means of disassociating. An alter does not have a whole person perspective for decision making and can be easier to manipulate. I was trafficked with a group of children. Inside the dumps, we were programmed all together and to one another. We had to have these connections to one another to form a formidable black ops team when sent on assignments. Our psychic abilities were synced up with one another. We always considered each other family, and to this day some of us still do. Family, friends. We had to be, so that was just that. The people who were in charge in the dumps told us that every kid had to go through Super Soldier and MK Ultra projects. We were told we were no different from anyone else, and we were nothing special. We were also programmed not to remember. They used hypnotism, drugs, and trauma-based torture techniques on us. We were never supposed to remember what happened to us. In the dumps, they brutalized, tortured, and killed us. The ones left alive were then farmed out for different purposes. We were sent to D.C. to be politicians. Some were sent to Hollywood or the music industry, and some were sold to healthy elite families. Yet others were used as drug runners, journalists, prostitutes, and as soldiers in the military. Next chapter, superhuman. As a super soldier, I had gifts and gained skills that were developed. I can create a dream and pull you into it. I can also invade your dreams. I have spirit eyes, which means I can see angels and demons the same way I can see the physical realm. I can astral travel, astral project, remote view, and send telepathic messages. I have psychic abilities and a photographic memory. I am able to leave my body and touch you so you will feel me brush beside you. I can leave my body to operate an avatar. I can leave my body, maneuver my spirit, and still operate my physical body. My physical abilities were superhuman strength and the ability to run as fast as lightning. I was trained by special forces to hand myself against multiple attackers. I knew weapons and how to handle myself in combat and deadly situations. When I sleep, I can see through my eyelids to the room around me, and light does not disturb me from sleeping. Next chapter, Dinosaur. I remember being inside a dome that looked like a warehouse with rows and aisles of cages. Inside each cage were groups of young children. The children were wired to each other as well as to the cage, and there was a constant humming sound. We were tied to the cage itself. The white lab coats would flip the switch, and suddenly we were being electrocuted. Most of the children died. In my cage, the little blonde boy, who grew up to be a high-ranking super soldier, was still left alive. He put his hand on top of mine and said, "Bow your head like the slaves did to the Egyptians." I instantly bowed my head because walking down the aisle was a fallen satanic entity that looked like a T-Rex dinosaur. It is the best way I can explain it. It had a cape on as kings wear. It had large feet and a fat, large tail, beady eyes, and was scaly just like a dinosaur. It came right to my cage. It looked at me, ignoring the little boy who was also inside the cage. The dinosaur asked me, "Why are you still alive?" I answered, "It still hurts, but some of the pain went away." It asked me, "What are you scared of?" I responded, "You." It laughed at me and said I had no reason to be scared of it. It took me out of the cage and into the next room. The walls were part windows so people in the warehouse could see directly in. I guess warehouse, the dumb. How do you explain that? The dinosaur began to rape me with the other remaining children who were still alive, watching what it was doing to me. When it was done, it beat me to a pulp, and I think it fractured my skull. When it was done, the dinosaur left the room and screamed at the white lab coat to leave me there. I was thrown against the wall on the floor and left there bleeding. I remember having to sleep inside of that cage. All the other cages had children locked inside too. We were like lab rats to the white lab coats. I remember bringing my pillow back to that cage. My pillow or my blanket. Next chapter, Witch. Inside one of the dumbs there was an evil witch. I did not like her at all, and I know she hated me. However, there was one little girl locked inside a different cage who did not like me either, but she did like the witch. She thought the witch was her friend. The witch was fat, had ratty clothes on, and was truly ugly to look at with the naked eye. Evil emanated off of her. One day the witch came in the warehouse where all the cages were, with us locked inside of them. The witch took a liking to that little girl, and the little girl was proud of that. Right from the start, I could see I was in trouble. The witch came to take the little girl out of her cage and to the back of the warehouse, into like a my lab. The little girl gave me an evil death look, and her eyes lit up green. She was spared from ensuing electrocutions, or at least she thought she was spared. One day the witch came, excuse me. Get back. Hey. Save him. Excuse me. One day the witch came to take me from my cage. She walked to the back of the warehouse and into another room. There were chairs inside, and that little girl who gave me an evil stare was strapped down into one. The witch put me in another chair, strapping me down as well. I remember looking around the room and seeing what looked like little children inside of jars. The witch started inserting needles with tubes inside of me. Then she put black goo inside of the tubes, and it entered into my body through the needle. I felt like I was being sucked down into a bottomless hole. I was clutching on to dear life to stay alive and keep my heart beating. The witch injected the other little girl with the same stuff. I do not know if my biological mother was aware at the time that this was going on. I do not know if my biological mother had any participation in these projects or if she was used as an MKUltra mind slave. I have no idea what my biological mother's involvement was or was not or is in these projects, but I know she was in my life to reinforce the programming I underwent. She could be very cold-hearted and cruel, just like the programmers. At times, she was belittling, which caused me great emotional and mental anguish. Very neglectful, ignored me. It kept me from ever having self-confidence and self-esteem. It put doubt in my mind. I would say to her, please bring back my nice mommy. You are the mean one. She was the type that when I cried in my crib, she would not come and cradle me. She would leave me there until I cried myself back to sleep. After 3 months, my grandparents decided to fly to Antonio, Texas to pick me up and bring me back home to New Jersey with them. I do remember this. I was very happy. I remember when my grandparents got there, my grandmother slept next to me and Papa slept on the floor. I felt so bad I offered him my baby blanket and baby pillow. When they came to bring me home is the only time I remember my mother and my biological mother in Texas. I remember my grandparents and I flew on Eastern Airlines. Many people were coming back from a Cowboys football game. They all had big cowboy hats on. The pilot of the airlines came out and gave me a pin. It had eagle's wings on it, which was their trademark. Next chapter, vacation. Once a year, my grandparents would take me on vacation somewhere. When I was between the ages of 4 and 6, my grandparents brought me up to Niagara Falls 3 times. One year, we spent Easter at Niagara Falls in Canada. I remember this well because I received an Easter basket at my grandma's house in New Jersey, my biological's mother apartment in Somerville, as well as the hotel we were in on vacation in Canada. I believe that because of my grandfather's involvement in the Navy during World War II on a minesweeper ship, the government tracked me. I am considered a multi-generational MKUltra / super soldier. If my grandparents had been awake and aware, knowing what was happening to them as well as to me, they would have put their foot down and put a stop to these things immediately. I do not believe that my grandfather knew what was happening to him, let alone to me. I believe that he himself was an unwilling candidate and human experimentation candidate in these human and genetic experimentation projects. I remember when we visited Niagara Falls, a mother of one of the children in the dumps would enter the hotel room where my grandparents and I slept. She would either take me out or bring me back. The last time she brought me back, she told me that I would not be coming back to Nelson, Canada's facility. The boy she was a mother to grew up to be a commander to me. Next chapter, Nelson, Canada. I remember being brought by a convoy into the dump at Nelson, Canada with other children. We seemed to be taken into a carport. Other children were flown into this facility via small personal jets. It was an above-ground facility. We were all wrapped in blankets and huddled together. They brought us into the building and into a small room. The memories are fragmented, but I believe they gave us LSD because I recall us children all feeling the effects of a chemical. It was harsh, uncontrollable, acid feeling, and everything before me seemed vivid in color, noise, and feel. There were adults in the room with us, a woman and two men. A woman seemed to wear some type of nurse outfit, and the men were dressed in Nazi soldier garb. I can remember them making us play a color game. Each child had to pick a color tag. It was my turn. I almost picked a color pink because my grandmother's favorite colors were pink and purple. However, when I reached for the pink tag, I saw a smudge on it. I changed my mind and chose the yellow tag. One boy picked blue, another boy picked green, and so on and so forth. Once the children were done picking different colored tags, the woman programmer called out a color. It happened to be pink. The child to pick the pink tag was excited, thinking it had done well. Instead, the child was grabbed and picked up by one of the men in the room, who brought the child to the side of the room where a rather large animal looking like an overgrown wolf was caged. The man threw the child into the cage where the overgrown wolf mauled the child to death. The rest of us children watched in terror and horror. Then people came into the room, grabbed us children, strapped us down to gurneys, and wheeled us into separate rooms. I do not much remember what happened after that. Please remember my memories are scattered and fragmented. I am still in recovery, and I am writing this book within the first 4 years of my waking up process. Actually, current day, I just had my 6-year anniversary. Wow, this was 2 years ago. Interesting. What I remember of Nelson, Canada is that during the nights we got so cold, so freezing cold, when it was time for us children to sleep, they kept us in what seemed like a hangar. There were 2 rows of cots. That is where we slept with the hangar doors open. All the children were terrified and hid under their covers, shivering. We were exposed to the elements. One night when the security guards were not looking, I ran over to the other row of cots where I saw the young boy who grew up to be the commander staring at me. I jumped into his cot and told him, "We have to keep warm or we will die." We hugged each other to keep warm and were able to fall asleep for a little while. I heard a noise that woke me up and ran from his cot back to mine. When I jumped in, the sheets and pillows were stiff, so stiff they wouldn't move, or bend, and colder than ice cubes. The security guards entered the hangar and screamed for all of us kids to get on our feet. We were barefoot. The security guards dressed in all black fatigues. They wore helmets covering their faces, and they always carried weapons and large guns. They were not nice to us kids either. I think the security guards would rape the children at night and abuse them. One security guard seemed nice, though. I heard him talking to the little boy that I slept next to, trying to keep warm. The nice security guard told him that I was his friend, and that meant a lot to me. I feel that some of us built bonds with one another when we could. However, we also knew not to get too close as we were expendable. Sometimes we children would have a chance to talk to each other without being caught. As much as we hated it there, we also spent a lot of time there. The little boy who grew up to be the commander told me that I did not want to stay there with him and to go back to live with my grandparents. It was decided by the head of the Nazi scientists who were there and other programmers who helped them that they were going to transport us children to another facility for more programming. They loaded us children into a convoy of multiple vehicles and began traveling down winding roads through the mountains. All of a sudden, we heard gunshots and our convoy was under fire. I was in what seemed like a Hummer. There were about 3 to 5 of us in each Hummer. When the Hummer was hit that I was in, we looked at each other very alarmed and surprised. The adults in the front seats told us to get out and run. They pulled out their weapons and began firing back. There was a huge pause during gunshots. We exited from the passenger rear door and ducked down, caught our breath and looked around. The adults in the front of the vehicles started firing back into the hills and fields alongside the road. Once out of the vehicle, I was with 2 boys. I think they were brothers. We were dressed in white hospital clothes similar to what orderlies wear. We saw other children evacuating the other Hummers and running. Some kids were shot and killed while others were escaping. The convoy was taking a beating under gunfire. Adults from the convoy were shooting back and engaging the team sent to ambush us. The 2 boys and I saw a building we thought was close enough that we could get to. The 3 of us ran as fast as we could towards it to take cover from the gunfire. The bullets were whizzing through the building walls at us. Whether the walls were too thin or the bullets were too well designed and made to be stopped by walls, there was no way to take shelter from the attack. I don't like how that came out. The bullets were whizzing past us. We finally get up to that house, and we start running around that house trying to take cover, but the bullets kept just coming right through the boards. So there was no cover there, so we took off. We had no choice. So I remember we get to this one point, and we're sitting there ducking down, covering, and the 3 of us decide we've got no choice. We've got to run. So we take off running, and the boys are in front of me. The 2 boys and I could not stay by the building any longer, and we had to make a break for it and run for the woods. The first boy, who was tallest, the oldest, ran out first, then the smaller boy, and lastly me. I was right behind them, keeping up the pace, running as fast as my feet could carry me. I see to my left the youngest boy get hit in the back of the shoulder with a bullet. He goes down. The tallest boy and I kept running and never looked back. I black out after this, and I do not remember what happened next. Later in my awakening, I did some research about what happened to me. Turns out, Majestic 12 ambushed us. It may be that they were trying to rescue us kids from the specific facility at Nelson, Canada. So it was like a rescue mission, but rough to go through. All right. Next chapter, Skinner boxes and rattlesnakes. It just keeps getting better and better from here, guys. Seriously. So, excuse me for an informal recording. Alright. Us children were exposed to the worst imaginable traumas and tortures. They would lock us in Skinner boxes, which I hated. Ugh. The baby snakes would slither between my toes, and I would try to hold still and pretend I was dead, barely breathing and making no movements. I do not know how long they would leave me in there. All I know is it was lengths of time. Another time was children were lined up on a field, plywood boards were placed across the field, but underneath them were rattlesnakes. We were made to run as fast as we could on top of the boards and told not to be bit by the rattlesnakes. Yeah, go running across the field on top of the boards and don't get bit by the rattlesnakes that are all under the boards. Yeah, dodge them and go. Just go. MK Ultra. There's your gauntlet. Excuse me. I remember us kids hauled ass. But once you get one rattlesnake pissed off, I mean, it's like seconds before that whole field is lit up, you know? Anyway, before we could get to the other side, and let me tell you, on the other side, I was envisioning Grandma's house, okay? I was envisioning Grandma's house and trying to get to the other side. Before we could get to the other side of the field, the other rattlesnakes were already jarred and spooked, making it more dangerous towards the end. I almost reached the other side, but the rattlesnakes were faster. They reared up from the sides of the plyboards, and one struck me in the foot. But I tried to keep running. My memory goes blank at this point. I do not remember what happens afterwards. I hate snakes. Next chapter, operations on the children. We were implanted and operated on. As far as I know, the implants put inside my body were to give me access to DOMs, as well as other things, other abilities. I remember one little boy being operated on. They had his body spread open and pinned similar to what students in school do when dissecting a frog for science class. I saw 3 doctors standing over this little boy on the operating table. I also saw 3 or 5 dark powers or principalities standing over the doctors as they operated on the little boy. It seemed like they were doing something to this little boy's organs and putting metal into his skeleton. Next chapter, he picked the other child. Sorry. I have memories of other children and I being left to the elements outside in a fenced area. One occasion, there were about 15 of us. When the main Nazi scientist entered the fenced-in area, as children sat down on the ground, all of us were starving and thirsty. The Nazi scientist started to talk and walk. It could have been more than 15 kids. The Nazi scientist started to walk to us children, and he looked straight at me. All right, so we're in this fenced-in area. There's a group of kids. There's at least 15 of us. We're outside. We're miserable, right? All of a sudden, in walks the main Nazi scientist. We sit down. No. I think this is a part where he loves me not. Comes into play. Always games and always that trickery. So all of a sudden, he looks straight at me. And then he starts walking through the children, walking straight towards me, looking straight at me. And while he's doing this, I am trembling and quaking and going inside myself. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, geez, it's my time to be dropped and mauled in with that werewolf. My time is up. And he comes charging at me, walks through all the kids, looks at me, walks towards me, looking at me. And all of a sudden, I kid you not, the last second, he turns to his left, takes a couple of steps, reaches down, grabs that kid, yokes that kid up, walks to the front of everybody, and just rips that kid to shreds. My memory goes blank from there. I didn't exactly stick to the script on there, but I think it came out better when I just told you. The way I told you. Next chapter, electrocution. Electrocutions were the worst. I've got a lot of memories about them. One memory I have recalled I will never forget. They're all unforgettable. Okay. I was in a cage inside a smaller room. The room was filled from the ceiling to the floor, so the cages were stacked up, and on three walls there were cages, kids in each cage, and so it wasn't a big warehouse, but it was a smaller room, and in the center of the room was a table. The main Nazi scientist would flip the switch and electrocute all the children that were locked inside of each cage. He would do that repeatedly. Just as quickly as he would stop the electrocution, he would start the electrocution over and over again. We would be unable to catch a breath. The Nazi scientist would pause the electrocution only to grab a child from a cage, bring that child to the center of the room, place the child on the table, and then he would torture that child to death with the rest of us watching. What I mean by that is the Nazi would cut the child, disembowel, and dismember the child. This was likely a satanic ritual that was accompanied Then the electrocution rounds would start up again. There was blood all over the room. I think this was to desensitize us, to dehumanize us, to get us used to bloodshed so it wouldn't faze us. It was a part of the programming. At one point, there was a little boy in a red shirt in the cage next to mine. And he had said something, and I responded back, "We'll be lucky when they kill us." That little boy and I were the only children left alive that day in that room. He grew up to be a teammate of mine. I do not recall how many other children were tortured to death that day. What kept me alive was the desire to get back home to my Grandma and Papa. Next chapter, children being raped. Sorry, I'm like getting distracted. Next chapter, children being raped. The main Nazi scientist had me and two other little boys inside what seemed like an office. It had a couple of desks and a bunch of chairs, and there were windows to the room. I was tied to a chair. The Nazi took the one little boy and severely raped him with me and the other boy watching. The Nazi forced us to encourage him to rape that little boy. Then the Nazi took the second little boy and raped him. It was brutal to watch what was happening, but this was the worst part of the programming. It was to dehumanize us and make us tolerant to violence. Adults raping us, next chapter. Another little boy and I were sold to adults is the best way I can state this. We were in a room with a bunch of adults who stripped off our clothes. Then they laid us down on the floor and started to rape us. There were some women there too, and they raped us as well. I started to lose it and disassociate from my body. I looked over at the little boy who was being raped too. Our eyes met, and then I went blank. When the adults were finished, the little boy and I were taken to rooms to shower and get dressed. We were cleaning off blood and the body fluids of these adults who had raped us. I was a wreck and crying. I thought the little boy was okay because he did not seem to be fazed by it as I was. He said to me, "Holly, there's no difference between what they did to me as what they did to you. You know, he's a boy, I'm a girl. Still, there's no difference." Next chapter. School in the dumps. I went to school inside the dumps just like I did my normal life. I got things right, and the white lab coats teaching us always seemed pleased with me, unlike the regular teachers I had in regular school. I excelled, and I liked it much better. They would give us puzzles and things. We would use our psychic abilities. The only drawback was if a kid acted up or got in trouble, we all paid the price. We learned different languages, other mathematics, symbols, and advanced technology, about 1,000 years ahead of our time. Next chapter, breeding program. I was used in the breeding program. I was impregnated at a young age. I remember being brought to a my lab with my grandmother. She looked like she was in a hypnotic trance. A big German fellow in a doctor's white lab coat put me on the table. He took my baby from me, and it tore me apart. It was half human and I guess half alien. I don't know. Next chapter, Monastery. Where I grew up in New Jersey, just a few miles down the road was a monastery. It has since been bought by private homeowners and is under heavy surveillance. Do not go there for any reason. The monastery was owned by a railroad tycoon. There were reflecting ponds, and it is beautiful there. Big reflecting ponds and statues and just rolling hills and acres, just beautiful. There's a big, huge lake that goes around it. However, there is an ominous side to it. The statues that surround the front of the monastery are not of the 12 apostles, but rather the 12 people who crucified Jesus. It has a lake that surrounds about 50% of the back side of the property. There was a boathouse that was abandoned, and for many years it was half sunken into the lake and half sunken into the lake before it finally fully collapsed in. A river runs off from the lake, and there is a waterfall. I was a very young girl under the age of 17. No, incorrect. I was under the age of 10. No, I was under, to be more specific, why is this all out of whack? I was under the age of 8 years old for this section of my book. Okay, so let me start here. I was under the age of 8. There was a man with dark hair who always wore black pants and a black leather jacket. He was one of my programmers. He would take me out of my house late at night when everyone was sleeping and bring me to this monastery. I was brought there a few times that I can recall. If my memory serves me correctly, he drove a 4-door blue car, but also a truck, pickup truck. One night I was brought there with several other children. They took us inside the front doors and to a room to the right-hand side. No, left-hand side. One night I was brought there with several other children. They brought us inside the front doors and we went to a room on the left-hand side. There the adults took the hoods off our head that covered our faces. There were many men there, but some women there too. They took some of the children into the other rooms, which were on the right-hand side of the front door. I was left behind with a group of children. The adults were feeding us alcohol and drugs. All the children were being raped, and I do not know how many they killed. The programmer came into the room before all of this really started to commence, and he came into the room and he told me to come with him, and he took me out. So I wasn't raped with all the other kids there that time, but he had come in at this one occasion and took me out. And we continued to the back of the monastery, and he brought me down by the lake where the house was partially sinking into it. There was a cage. He told me to decorate the inside of the cage as if it were a room. The programmer told me to go get rope from the truck that was parked slightly up the hill. When I brought it to him, he had tricked a little boy with a dog to get inside the cage. The programmer tied the child down and then submerged the cage into the water and then walked away. I had to walk away with him, of course. I kept staring back, looking back at the cage inside of the water, and began to worry about the dog and boy. I couldn't stop looking back. The programmer screamed at me, "Stop looking back and forget about him." I was brought back home and put back inside of my bedroom without the rest of the household waking up. Please remember, these programmers are black operations. Black operations can enter a house filled with dogs, walk around them, do what they want, and the dogs will never wake up. Black operation soldiers have abilities way beyond the average person. I could not get that. There was a night when I was brought back from the monastery that I just couldn't get back to sleep. Things in my stomach just weren't settling. I couldn't deal with it. So I ended up walking back to the monastery a few miles down the road. I went to the cage. I guess it was this night I went to the cage. I don't think so. I want to go back and redo this. So I went back one night, and I went back and I got a few of the kids that were still at the monastery. I'm not sure if it was the boy that was in the cage that was sunken down in the lake, but I know I went back to the monastery. And I got a few of the kids. We walked back through the night to my grandmother's house. On our way back, we were all cold. Some of us were barefoot, half dressed, but we kept marching towards my grandmother's house because it felt like we were marching towards freedom. Every time I hear the song "Over the River and Through the Woods to Grandmother's House We Go," it reminds me of this. We finally made it back to my grandmother's house. I brought Sorry. I'm going to pause right here. You know what, Anna? I think there's reasons why there's mistakes, and I think it was because of what was going on during the time period. So I'm not blaming anyone. I'm don't take it like that. So I am so honored for what you did. I am so honored for what you did for me. I love you so much. Thank you. Forgive me for reading this. Geez. So sometimes I can get through it with ease, and other times I'm stumbling now. We finally made it back to my grandmother's house. I brought the children inside. She seemed to be in a trance or hypnotized. She sat us at the table and began cooking breakfast. We ate and started to feel free. A knock came at the front door. As Graham stood at the stove still preparing more food, I answered the door. It was one of the mothers to the boy. It was one of the mothers to the children. I had seen her before in Nelson, Canada. She was always nice to me and looked gently, never angry, almost as if she completely understood why I did things. She did not scold me for what I had done by freeing the other children. I was tortured enough. She told me, "Holly, you cannot do that again." And then she took the children with her and left. Project Beta. I believe I was not in Project so I believe I was not in Project Monarch per se, but I was in Project Beta. I was paired up with the boy who grew up. I don't like this. I was paired up with another boy. We were about 13 years old. The lab coats instructed us as well as watched us. They taught me and the boy how to have sex right down to every detail. This was my first time ever kissing a boy and the first time I ever had sex. Everything was done by their instruction. I was so embarrassed and humiliated and ashamed. Are you kidding me? Now more so than ever. When it came time for us to have an orgasm during intercourse, the boy whispered in my ear, "Bury your head in my neck and pretend they're not here." We had to simultaneously orgasm together. I saw his soul and my soul light up, intertwine in each other, and explode around us like a huge soap bubble. The lab coats wanted us to create that spiritual tie with one another. We were taken out of the room and placed into another one to get dressed. As I sat to tie my shoes, the boy sat very close next to me and leaned into me. He whispered, "You're not my first, but you're my best." That eased a little of the uncomfortable, embarrassing feeling I was having. Lastly, I believe these soul ties were made between two super soldiers as we needed them for combat situations and other missions or assignments. We had a connection to one another and knew each other's footsteps, moves, breaths, heartbeats before they even happened. It made us work as one, and it made us more powerful because we were connected. He could draw from my energy, and I could cover him and be his backup in the spirit. I could alert him telepathically of incoming dangers. Plus, I could pick up on him. Next chapter. I'll check that out by my website because I have problems getting to my website too. I have to type it out, or I'll have to go to a completely different browser. It's a pain in my neck. It better be up. I recall a fragmented memory of being with 3 other little boys and being locked into army barracks. The boys I remember were At the time, there was a cot for each of us. The barrack was partially built into the ground, but had windows that we could see through the outside on the ground level. They tricked us by acting normal and bringing us into the room. Then they left, locking the door behind them. Since we were used to being locked up, we did not suspect what they were about to do. The sky turned red and orange light colors. I think they dropped a bomb on us or near us, and the door was locked, trapping us 4 inside with no escape. The boy to my left stood up from his cot and started to tremor. His teeth began to fall out from his mouth. The boy to my immediate right started shaking and it looked like he was melting. The boy to his right sat up from the cot but was frozen in a ball. I got mad because they tricked us. I started to pray to God, begging for this not to happen and not to let us kids get hurt. Oh man, I remember standing up with my hands in my fists, screaming and punching the air. I was so angry. I believe the next memory I have is the other kids and I being in a medical tent. They had tubes hanging out of them, and we were in quarantine in what seemed like rooms separated by clear plastic. I felt something in my throat. I reached my fingers inside my mouth and pulled out a growth of some sort. Hey, Doug. Yeah, I want to redo it. I want to take out specifics. I think it's way too specific. I don't like it. I think I'm going to take this one down. I'm going to leave the rough draft up. So, it's just way too specific. Let's see. Next chapter. Satanic sacrifice for chosen. We were continually subjected to a traumatizing process called a program which mainly featured electrocution. The people torturing us would foster competition amongst us children by smiling at children who seemed to bear it best. Due to electrocution, I don't recall everything that was going on. One day they had finished a program. We were outside in the sun trying to play like children do. People in black hooded robes holding different objects in their hands came outside chanting something. They passed in front of us, then entered a smaller building. They were doing a satanic ritual. There was one child in particular that had done rather well handling the program we just completed. He was chosen as their sacrifice. I said to another one of the children that I was held outside with, well, why does he get chosen? And the other kid was trying to explain it to me, and he said, Holly, you don't want to be chosen because later you're going to die. They beckoned the one child to come inside that had done rather well through the project. They beckoned that child to go inside the building with them, and the rest of us kids stayed outside in the sun, and we were like climbing trees, horsing around. It was one of the few times that we were able to do so. Next chapter, fighting super soldiers. Oh, geez. If this is specific, I swear I'm going to have a panic attack right now and just delete everything off the internet. As a teenager, I was brought into a dump by the commander. He was in a room with a golden cube in his hand. There was a girl sitting on top of his lap. The commander called me into the room and told me to fight her. I walked over to her, grabbed her away from him, and began to fight her. I was ordered to fight until the death. When the fight ended, she was on the floor motionless. I stood above her and then turned to walk out of the room. It was either her or me, and I was not about to die that day. As I exited the room, I crossed the hallway to the other side and put my back to the wall, sinking down into a sitting position with my hands on my knees and resting my head upon my hands. The commander came out of the room. He was wearing a glove on one hand. He looked at me and said, "Get used to it." And then he continued down the corridor and exited through the door. Next chapter, on the moon. The kids that I was trafficked with by the military were sent to the moon. Yeah, jeez. This one. We were sent on a mission or an assignment. When we were there, people... Jeez, I can't even get through this. I gotta take a break. I told you I'm taking a break. I'll get through this recording. It's like torture. It really is. All right, next chapter. On the moon. Come on, troops, get with it. On the moon. The kids I was trafficked with by the military were sent to the moon. When we were there, the people running the project tried to blow us to Kingdom Come. There was an explosion that blew us to smithereens. I don't know what happened. I don't know if we did something wrong. I don't know if it was planned. I have no idea. The next thing I know is they blow us up to smithereens. I remember the commander and I crawled away from the scene on our elbows and belly. There were only a couple of us left alive by my recollection. I had fallen into a hole and it almost took my foot off. my leg. The hole I fell in was like one of those holes you see in the Vietnam War that has spikes in it, but there's leaves that cover it, so it's set up like a booby trap, and it blends into the scenery. Merchants came traveling by in smaller aircrafts they called pods. I remember this large, strong man reaching out his arm, and he grabbed me in one fast swoop and brought me into the aircraft. Behind me in the other pod, they picked up the commander, who also survived. The mercenaries brought us to the swastika-shaped building on the backside of the moon. In that swastika-shaped building was a hospital. It's one of our military bases. It's just on the moon instead of the earth. When I became conscious again, when I regained consciousness, I was in a hospital bed. I was all bandaged up, and I was wrecked. As I looked around, I saw multiple beds in a row and a couple of different doors in the room, and like a couple of desks. I got up and I walked around the room, and I went to the door to exit the room, and when I opened up the door, I walked into the hallway. And I took one look around me, and I saw like 4 different species of aliens, and I just collapsed right onto the floor. One of the nurses with like a red shirt, beige pants, or beige shirt, red pants, she came over with a spatula and picked me up and brought me back into the hospital room. And she closed the door. I asked her to keep the door closed because the sight of those things was so disgusting and horrific. I didn't want to see them. So shortly thereafter, the doctors enter my hospital room. They told me I was going to be in the hospital for a few weeks to heal. I asked them where my commander was. The doctor responded that he was in bad shape and I could not see him. I threw a temper tantrum, and I demanded the doctors let me see him now. So finally they shut me up. They went and got him. They wheeled him into the room through one of the back doors of the room, and he wheeled him in, and he sat in that chair, and he looked comatose. And he was mangled, all bandaged up, just wrecked, and he's sitting in that wheelchair. And I walked over to him, and I knelt down before him, and I put my hand on his knee, and I was like, "Commander, are you all right?" And the doctors wheeled him back out, and that's when they told me I had a clone. The doctor said, "You're going to be here for a few weeks, but nobody on earth is going to miss you because there's a clone in your place." And I remember in my mind, astral traveling, astral projecting, whatever it was, looking through the moon, so to speak, straight to the earth and honing in on my grandmother's house and making sure that that clone was being nice to my grandmother while I was up there in the hospital healing. And I spent the rest of the time just sitting on my bed, facing the wall, and making sure that the hospital door was closed to my room so I didn't have to look at those heinous things. There was a Coke machine around, like if you had walked out of the hospital, my hospital room, and you made a quick right and then another quick right, there was a Coke machine right there. I think the mercenary that had brought the commander and I in. I think he came to visit me, and he had given me change so I could go and get Coke from the Coke machine. But there's more stuff that I remember on the moon. Next chapter, Trauma Center in the UK. The group of children I was being programmed with were taken to an above-ground government facility in the UK. It was a trauma center, but not the kind you would expect. In the mornings, the staff would gently whisper to wake us up, and they would escort us into the cafeteria that was brightly painted with pastel colors. There were many windows open with a warm breeze blowing inside. They fed us good food. Us kids would sit with each other and make drawings, feeling a sense of peace and security. However, after breakfast, we were put back into grueling MKUltra projects. It was a trauma center to cause trauma, just a different type of programming. I remember sitting at the breakfast table with another one of the kids, drawing pictures. And I remember the sun being out and there being a warm, nice breeze. And everything was just so gentle about this place. And the nurses just talked to you so kindly and got you whatever you wanted. But then, as soon as breakfast was over, you were put right back in it. Next chapter, blasphemy. When exiting a dump with other children, I said, if Jesus loves all the children, then where was he just now when they were doing that to us? The other children agreed with me. We had just gone through brutal hell, and I got mad at Jesus. Next chapter, Pizzagate, Pedogate. During Ronald Reagan's presidency, I believe that I was sent over to Russia with a bunch of other children. Politicians at the time ordered us as if they were ordering pizza or fast food. But we were also sent there, to collect information and spies because you use sex as a weapon. There were a bunch of men, and they were raping me and the other children. Some of them would put, I don't want to get into all that, some of them apparently would put things and objects inside of the kids. They had disgusting fetishes and such. The politicians would feed us drugs so we were more docile. When one man finished, I was passed to the next one, and so on and so forth. At the end, one politician got a hold of me, but he was different than the rest. He was gentle with me and did not touch me in a harsh, brutal manner. He took a liking to me. The ironic thing is that back in my normal life, I was in 5th grade. And during this time, while I'm going through this in the DOMS, in my normal life, I was in 5th grade, and we had a physical fitness test in gym class. And they had this presidential patch, so it was a fitness thing. So you had to do a certain amount of sit-ups, certain amount of pull-ups. You had to run a certain distance under an amount of time, and you had to reach a certain set of goals. And if you reached these certain set of goals, then President Ronald Reagan would give you a certificate and a presidential patch. Of course, I blew all the other kids in gym class out of the water when it came to achieving those standards. I was the best, I was the fastest, I was the strongest, I was the most coordinated. Next chapter, Pyramid in South America. The commander and I were taken to a Mayan pyramid and told what to do. Once he and I were on top, he performed a human sacrifice of a young girl. See, we were forced to do these things in the DOMS, okay? There wasn't a choice about it. It wasn't like him and I decided to go to this pyramid, like we just bought a ticket out of the blue, hopped a plane, and let's go do this. No. Okay, these kids and I were trafficked. We were brought to South America. We were told what to do, and we did it. So we were taken to the Mayan pyramid. We were told what to do. a human girl was sacrificed on top of the pyramid. And there was blood everywhere. And once this was done, out of the night sky steps this light being. It just steps out of the darkness, steps down on the pyramid, and starts talking to me like it's no big deal. When this happened, I immediately had an out-of-body experience. I left. And when I left, it was like I flew out into the darkness. I then turned around, looked back at the pyramid, and I looked back at the spiritual being standing there talking to me, and I'm talking to it. Apparently this was done so that we could obtain the powers of this dark power or principality that appeared as a light being, an angel of light. Next chapter, jungle warfare. I believe I was taken with other soldiers into the jungle of South America. We were sent down there to fight an entity that was not supposed to be here on Earth. I was in a Hummer. We were in a Hummer driving a convoy. Inside the Hummer was the commander, another super soldier, and me. The commander was sitting in the back. All of a sudden we hear, I think we had stopped to take a drink out of the thermos, the three of us. And then all of a sudden we hear a strange noise. Suddenly me and the other super soldier are out of the Hummer. I jump out of the driver's side door. I fly over the hood of the car. The other super soldier had jumped out of the passenger's door, and he ran towards this tree and then started running up it. We had morphing abilities, is the best way I can explain it. So, and all it took was a couple of seconds for these morphing abilities to kick in. So from the second we heard that noise, 2 steps into taking action, the other super soldier is morphing, and so am I. We ran up on the trees. The other soldier, we're on top of the tree line at this point, the treetops. Once we were up there, let's see, what does the book say? The development of unseen abilities became visible. We appeared taller and stronger, visibly capable of what we could achieve in the spirit realm. My powers were I could throw up defenses. I could wave my hands and just an automatic shield would come up, so whatever incoming fire from the aliens, it would be deflected. The other soldier had other abilities, so he morphed into a bigger, stronger, faster person, and soldier, and he was offensive forces. So that was his main ability. I'm defensive, he's offensive. So we go chasing after this entity like we're Tarzan through the jungle. And as we're chasing it, we jump down off the treetops, and we're running on the ground now through the jungle. And this entity fires back on us, and when it did, we had to make a split. So I dive one way, the other soldier dives the other way, and we dodge fire. And it ended up that the entity, at that point, jumped aboard its mothership and took off. So as the alien ship takes off and flies overhead, not more than 2 seconds later, these black helicopters come flying over the treetops and take off in pursuit after it. So when I came back to where the commander was and the other soldiers were by the convoy, I walked up and I felt like I had failed everything because this entity got away. And I looked at my commander and I was like, they're never going to let me back. I failed. And he just gave me this look like, get on the bus. You know? I think he was more disappointed in what I had said about myself than about what had happened during the mission. That's like the kind of look he gave me, you know? Next chapter, Peru. I was sent on another mission with a bigger team of super soldiers. Oh, jeez. While being transported, I kept leaning forward to the seat in front of me, and I kept continuously bugging the commander in front of me. I kept saying to him, do you remember the jungle? Do you remember the jungle? Hey, do you remember the jungle? I got to the point where I was irritating everybody on the bus. But I was so happy because I hadn't seen him in such a long time. Next chapter, relaxing in Peru. While we were in the jungle, the high-ranking super soldier and I took a breath from everything happening on the mission. I was driving the Hummer and took off into the jungle. He and I got laughing about things, and sure enough, I got the Hummer stuck on the side of the mountain. This caused us to laugh even harder. They came up with the idea to leave it there and go down to the water that was below. It was so beautiful there, and the sun was so nice. The weather was perfect, and we relaxed. This was one of the few good memories I have while being an active super soldier. Oh, one of the very, very few. That was funny. Next chapter, junior high school. Oh, jeez. I recalled a blonde-haired girl from the dumps. She was always nice to me, and I believed she and I were paired up at times while going through these MK Ultra projects. She and I were friends, or at least I considered her my friend. A group of girls were bullying me in this normal life between the ages of 12 and 17, and junior high was brutal. And then high school was definitely not any better. During that time that I was being bullied in this normal life, I was actually an active super soldier inside the dumps. I recall one time when I was walking side by side with this blonde-haired female super soldier down the corridors of the dumps. I was telling her about the group of girls in William Annan, and they're bullying me and wanting to kick my ass. The blonde-haired girl, she looked at me, the female super soldier looked at me, and with the biggest smirk and sparkle in her eyes, she said, Holly, you are here, not them. You were chosen and you're trained, not them. Don't be scared of them. You can take down that whole school if you wanted to. They are not strong and smart like you. We were programmed. Us kids in the dumps were programmed to think that all children everywhere had to go through all of these projects. We were made to think that we were nothing special, which could not have been farther from the truth. Next chapter, Montauk. I remember the Montauk chair, but my memories are very fragmented. I cannot give specifics as to what I was doing while in that Montauk chair. One time in the Montauk chair, I woke up. There was a white lab coat in the room. It looked like they were writing in a file. I got up. I was trying to call attention, but they kept ignoring me. So I got up from the chair and started to disconnect the tubes from the machines and that were still hanging out of my body. I stumbled to the door of the room. When I opened it, I saw what looked like a desk with someone sitting behind it and others walking around the hallway. I was so weak and could barely speak using my voice. I tried to yell, help me, help me. However, everybody kept ignoring me like I was not even there. Next chapter, trying to escape. They had us kids. Oh, jeez. Okay, trying to escape Montauk. Escaping Montauk. They had us kids they had us kids each in a cage inside a small room, and there was a chair in the middle of the room. The little boy who survived the electrocutions with me, that had the red shirt on, the boy that I drew in the cover of this book. Okay, so that same little boy. That boy who had survived the electrocutions along with me and grew up, he was there, and so were about 5 other little children. Somehow, this little boy and I tricked the white lab coat. We got free from our cages, beat him as best we could, and knocked him unconscious. We either tied him up or locked him in the cage. I cannot remember clearly. I told the boy, we have to get the rest of the kids, and we are escaping. We freed okay. We have to get the rest of the kids, and we were escaping. So we got the other kids out of the cages, and we made our way towards the tunnels. As we came through the tunnels, we came to this one part that had like prongs in the wall. And so I went to climb up and push the top off, but I wasn't strong enough. So I went back down, and I got the bigger boy, and he went up. And he was like, he's Superman, right? So he just pushes the cover off the tunnel of the top of the hole. And we helped the other kids get up and get out. And as soon as we get out of the tunnels, we did not expect it to be daylight. And they had us drugged. So between the fresh air and the daylight, which we didn't expect, we didn't make it too far. But we get out to the parking lot. And the tower's over to the side. And there's fences. So we get out to the parking lot. We get to this one part where we have to scale the fence. But we no sooner try to get scaling this fence, we cannot function and manipulate our bodies. The white lab coats came out. And they come running over to us, and they grab us kids up. And they run back and take us back inside Montauk. Next chapter, an elite family assassination. In my teenage years, I was taken on an assignment with my commander at a country. I think it was, at first I thought it was the UK, and then I thought, but then I've decided it was Paris. And the reason why is because I was looking up architecture of the UK and the Ferris wheels of the UK. And I looked up the architecture and Ferris wheels of France. My memories match France. Paris, France, I believe. Definitely that Ferris wheel. So we're put on assignment, and for 3 weeks we're cased in a place, and I hated it because the weather was cold and gloomy and always raining. And where we were, it was a lot of buildings. It seemed to be in a square, a couple of trees, not much cover, like a city square or a city block with buildings surrounding it, a lot of sidewalks. And I remember, having to eat food out of a bag, and then all the garbage piling up in the passenger seat where I sat. And there was one time towards the end of the assignment when it came time to do the assassination attempt. And the commander had said, we need to go out and take a break. Why don't we go blow off some steam? So we go and take off for the Ferris wheel, grab dinner, just have a nice time out, blow off steam. We have this big mission ahead of us. We've been casing the place for 3 weeks, parking in different spots, trying to not get noticed, and watch everything that's happening. And so we go out, and we start to walk up to get on the Ferris wheel. It was just such a nice night, I thought. So we start to get on the Ferris wheel, and sure enough, there's like 5 dudes in black leather jackets. They show up, bombard us, push us in the cartridge or cart, and there we go on the Ferris wheel. And 2 of these guys got me pegged, I guess, and 3 of them are on Commander. And they're screaming at him, "You better do this, you better do that, blah, 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 blah." I mean, they got him, like, by the collar, hanging him out backwards, out the cart door, threatening him, and, threatening him that if he's got to do this, and, they're threatening me too, obviously. And you can imagine the ways that they are threatening a woman. I really don't like to be graphic. Just use your imagination. So, long story short, they finally stop with their threat and their intimidation. And the Ferris wheel circles around and finally gets to the bottom. Finally, all of us get off the Ferris wheel. So, it comes time for the assignment to commence. Commander and I are sitting in the car, and we're decked to the nines. This is a banquet, okay? So we're decked to the nines. We're sitting in the car getting locked and loaded. And I look at the sign of the place, and I see the name of the banquet. And I look at Commander, and I say, "They're not my fucking family. Fuck them." We start getting ready, and it was time for him to go in. So he gets out of the vehicle, walks into the building. Some time goes by. I guess my job was to be like remote viewing and to look out, and also to continue to case the place outside to let him know what dangers he's facing outside of the building when he comes out, and also to make him have safe passage when he comes out. So all of a sudden you hear shots ring out, and a whole bunch of shots start ringing out, and here comes the Commander hauling ass out of the building, gets in the car, and he starts driving away as fast as possible. I'm turned around in my seat trying to fire back at the people chasing us. He's firing, but trying to drive at the same time, and shots are zinging, going back and forth. We're in a chase. The next thing I know, a bullet goes zinging through the door and hits me in my right side. And I turn around, and I fly back in my seat, and I put my hands on my waist. And when I look down, I snapped out of alter at this point. I look down, and there's just my blood everywhere, all over my hands and lap. I grab my side, start trying to apply pressure. I look at my Commander. I say, "Commander, I am so sorry. This is not supposed to happen. I am so sorry." And I don't remember anything from there. So if you're going to ask me, I'm going to tell you that we failed the mission. If you ask my Commander, he may give you a different story, but as far as I'm concerned, we failed. Next chapter, UK. I was over in the UK a few times as a super soldier. One night I was brought there with the Commander. We walked along the rocky water's edge. The rock shaped a man's head at the place where we were. We sat on the bench close by. It was night. Something happened which I cannot remember the details of, but it looked like a hatch opened from the ground and bright blinding light came out of it. There was alien activity in that area. I'm not sure what those aliens were doing. Navy boats appeared at the rocky shoreline. They attached cables to the rocky shore cliff and made their way up the top where I sat with the Commander. I think we were there to do some sort of satanic ritual. This is where my memory gets really fuzzy because I have two different... Something bad happened either during the satanic ritual or when the Navy soldiers began to bring me down the cables into the Navy boats. I think I could have fell and bashed my head on the rocks below. They ended up bandaging my head and proceeded to load me on the Navy boat. The commander then boarded. When he boarded, they got me on first. He boarded behind me, and when he boarded, he sat behind me, and I just remember him saying, "I cannot look at her." I kept screaming for them to give me scopolamine. The commander behind me told me it's on my armrests to the seats, and that's where the scope is. So just put my arms down on the armrest, and that's where the scope is. In other words, it was a transdermal administration of a drug. As we left the shoreline and sailed into the ocean, I remember thinking to myself, so this is how my papa in the Navy felt. So this is how my papa felt when he was in the Navy. And here I am. Stealing my heart. What page am I on? Am I there yet? I need a couple of seconds. All right, 10 more pages. So I'm definitely halfway through. Yay. Yay. I'm not. I gotta say, I don't like the editing process and I don't like the recording process. I don't like it at all. I don't want to do it again. I'll do interviews, but I don't want to do this again. So how about we take a couple-minute break so I can just have a couple minutes, because this is like a lot to get through. It's hard to sit still. I love you, Anna, so much. I'm so glad that you made it, sweetheart. But I know that you gotta go because you've got a lot to do. Okay, I need like a couple of minutes, guys. Forgive me. Just don't get mad. This is a lot. How long have I been running this anyway? Yeah, like we're on break time right now, if that's okay. Just I'm just gonna stretch, okay? Oh my gosh. Forgive me. I'm not trying to be rude, guys. It's just a lot to get through, you know? People talk about focus. I think I might be having one of those issues right now. My legs don't want to bend at the knees anymore. They want to just stay straight. I've been sitting way too long. That's why I'm so skinny, because all I do is stand up and pace for 8 hours a day. I'm no longer sitting behind a computer. I'm on my feet constantly. So now that I'm sitting down, I'm like, I gotta move. No. Alright guys, let's get back to it, because, how much longer is this going to take? Like another hour? Okay, I want to be done no later than 4. Okay, so this fun part, next chapter, stealing my heart. A programmer came to my house one day. My grandmother answered the door and he put her into an instant hypnotic trance. She brought him inside the house. He sat down at the kitchen table. When I walked outside of the bedroom and saw him sitting there, he demanded me sit down beside him at the table. Reluctantly, I did. Within seconds, he put me into a hypnotic trance as well, accessing my altars. Then he brought me into the room at the end of the house. He made me take off my clothes and do sexual things. I learned what the butterfly of monarch meant that day. He raped me. When he was done, he took my heart and put it in his briefcase. He said that I did not need a heart. I do not have a heart. When he went to leave, I chased after him, but I was no match for him. I ran back and forth from window to window on the porch, screaming at him, "Bring my heart back! Bring my heart back! No, 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 no! You can't leave! Bring my heart back!" He pulled out of the driveway. He pulled down the driveway, backed out, and was gone. I dropped to my knees on the floor and wailed. Then I thought to myself, I don't need to feel. I don't need to have a heart. I know in my brain, I know I love my grandmother, and that will never change no matter what is done to me. He did this programming to me to dehumanize me and make me feel like a robot. Next chapter, called for assignment. One evening I was at home with my boyfriend talking to my grandmother. The home phone rang. I answered it. The person said, "Is this Holly?" I responded, "Yes." The caller said, "Is this Holly Baglio?" Again, I responded, "Yes." The person said, "Is this Holly Nancy Gabery?" Suddenly, the lights in the room changed. As my vision seemed to alter, I felt a weird feeling come over me. My boyfriend looked at me in confusion about my facial expression and my reaction to the phone call. I hung up the phone and told him it was a wrong number. Later that evening, after he left, I was picked up for an assignment. Next chapter, former presidents. A former and deceased president of the United States of America brought another super soldier and I into a dome. When we entered, our foreheads were scanned to gain access. The super soldier was, okay, so the former president was walking first, the super soldier's walking next, and then me behind all three of them. As we walked through the underground base, we passed through what looked like classrooms filled with children. I looked in the room, and I could read these kids' minds. Like in the classroom, it was seated in rows like you would see in a typical classroom here in America, and then a teacher in the front with chalkboard, whatever. Or a couple of teachers in the front of the room, or adults rather, however you state it. So I walked past the room and I could read these kids' minds, and for them to see the former president walk through the dome was no big deal. And they knew exactly who the commander was, because there was like, ooh, who's that? That's commander. But who's that with commander? So they're looking at me thinking, well, who are you that you're with them? You know, the other super soldier has legendary status that precedes him. So we were escorted by the former president down the corridor into a dimly lit office. As I sat there with the other super soldier to the left of me and the former deceased president in front of us behind his desk, I was told I would be working for him now. When he left the room, I immediately looked at the other soldier and I said, I don't like him. That soldier responded back, you're not always going to like your bosses, Holly. The same super soldier and I were sent on an assignment in another country. I think it could have been Africa from the looks of the surrounding scenery. When the other soldier and I exited the plane upon our landing, I saw a former president in full army garb carrying like high-powered weapons and ammo all over him. I took one look at him, and then I turned to the other soldier again, and I say, I do not like him at all. Or like I hate him. The other soldier looked off into the field, into the distance, onto that former president, onto that soldier, and he gave him the death stare. Clearly, the commander and I agreed. So you have former presidents as programmers and active super soldiers, and you voted for them, just so you know. Accepted to black operations. I was approximately 18 years old. I'm hungry. All right. Hungry and antsy. Okay, now to more fun or easier parts of my testimony, I think. I think the stories get easier from here. I was approximately 18 years old when I was accepted onto black operations. The commander and I boarded a lot of people. Anyway, the commander and I boarded a black helicopter. There were 2 rows of seats facing each other. There were other officers and super soldiers there. The commander and I had parachutes strapped to our backs, and as you can imagine, I was extremely nervous. I hated that sinking feeling in my stomach from roller coasters, so to be jumping out of a helicopter was not my cup of tea. So we get onto the helicopter. We sit down in our row of seats. The pilots are to our left, the commander's to my left, and across from me was a couple other officers and a high-ranking super soldier. Very, very high-ranking super soldier. So there's another commanding officer that is sitting directly across from me. And I didn't know who he was at that time. I didn't know who these other people in the helicopter were. I just knew who my commander was and who was flying the helicopter, and that was it. So I didn't know these people sitting across from me, these other officers, and this one commanding super soldier that was there. I didn't know who they were at the time. So I'm sitting there and I'm getting real nervous about everything. And I lean forward and I say to this guy, I'm like, do you have any Dramamine? And he looks at me like I got 4 heads. And he goes, no. I'm like, he kind of started laughing. And I'm like, well, I'm scared. You might have to push me out. And so by this time I get him laughing. And he leaned forward and he goes, Holly, when you jump out, control your breathing. Take a deep breath in, and then when you go to jump out, hold your breath. And then once you start to feel that real bad sinking feeling that you hate, slowly exhale like you're exhaling through a coffee straw. Control and think about your breathing. Right? So cool. I really hated that falling sensation in the pit of my stomach. So control your breathing, slowly exhale, and it'll get rid of that sensation. The pilots, all of a sudden I hear the pilots say, ready! No! Ready! The commander stands up. Then I followed suit. He poised himself, and I'm standing right there behind him. I see the other commanding officer that I had just gotten done joking around with stand up from his seat and start to make his way towards me in the helicopter, right? So the pilots do their signal. I see the commander take a couple of steps. Boom, he's out the helicopter. Now it's my turn. I mean, this is like milliseconds. So now it's my turn. I got to be a few steps right behind the commander jumping out of the helicopter. So now it's my turn. And I see this other commanding officer get up, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, no, you don't. I am not letting you push me or throw me out of this plane. I will do it myself. So just as the commander's running out, I got this little thing called pride and ego, and I'll do it myself. And I get up right behind the commander, and I go flying out, and this other commanding officer, he barely even got his fingertips to brush by me, and I jumped out of the helicopter on my own, and we dropped into the sea. So when the commander and I resurface, we go flying out of the helicopter, we fall, drop into the sea, then we resurface, and it's all over with, right? And I survived. And I remember to control my breathing and slowly exhale. So I remember looking up at the helicopter and the other commanding officer leaning out looking at me, and I started to wave up, and I had a big smile. I mean, I survived, and it wasn't that bad with that falling sensation. Like, I could tolerate it. I wasn't nervous and scared anymore because I saw how controlling your breathing worked. So my commander looked at me and he started busting my chops. He's like, oh, so you like him now? You don't like me anymore? And that was when I was accepted onto Black Operations. Next chapter, Project Seagate. I remember when the other commander and I were sitting in front of the Seagate. The Seagate. There's only 3 worldwide. There's approximately 48 stargates. The difference is stargates are on the surface of the earth and Seagates are under the ocean, waves on the ocean floor and around there. I do not know the location of this underwater military base. We entered the room and there was a row of chairs. Okay, so we enter the room, there's a row of chairs here. We look in front of us, there's a desk, and there's another row of chairs on the other side of the room, and to our left is the Stargate. So we go in and we sit down in the chairs. And there's a wall behind us, and so to the left is a Stargate. There's a desk or big area here. We're sitting on a row of chairs. There's another row over there, and down to the left, the opposite side, there's doors that lead out of the building, but there's also doors on this side of the wall along the seats that are there, if that makes sense. So there was one night I was sitting there with the commanding officer and high-ranking super soldier, and all I remember is that silver cord. All I remember is I come walking through the Seagate, following that silver cord, and when I come walking through the Seagate, I see the high-ranking super soldier sitting there and myself sitting next to him, and I walk over to myself, and now like I'm back in my body, and I just remember the commanding officer going, "See, now that's how it's done." And so I guess that's when I really learned how to use my silver cord and a Seagate or whatever. So as we were sitting there and this was happening, I had said to him, I'm like, "Man, you smell really good." And I don't know what it is with this whole smell thing, but I'm on to it. So anyway, I'm like, "Wow, you smell really good." And immediately, these white lab coats come running into the room we are in, sitting in front of the Seagate, and they yelled at us. They're like, "What are you two doing in here?" So, got in trouble. Always getting in trouble. But I guess that's how I learned how to use a silver cord and walk through a Seagate. Okay, next chapter, going against the rules. Could have been his cologne that smelled good. I don't know. I think it was something else. To do with the programming and to access altars. Anyway, next chapter, going against the rules. So, I remember arriving in the dump, and the officer jumped down off the rig or whatever he was on, and he started laughing. He goes, "When I asked him for a skeleton crew, I didn't think they were going to send me an actual skeleton. And now here I am, and look at how skinny I am. I look like a skeleton again. I've lost so much weight. So now the skeleton can read." You about going against the rules. Yeah, so we went against the rules. I'm not taking sole credit for this. No. All right, going against the rules. A group of us were sent on a mission to another dimension on the other side of the Seagate. In the room, only half the chairs were filled, as only a few of the people I often went on missions with were sent over on this one occasion. So we had a skeleton crew on this one occasion. Once on the other side of the Seagate, from what I recall, I was in a body or avatar, not my astral body and not this body. The dimension had a dark sky, and it seemed like we were on a desert floor, but huge mountains. The other team members were, scattered around. A couple were on the opposite side of the gate, and they were away from me. So I was kind of off on my own. I remember looking around to make sure none of them were watching me. I took either something out of my pouch. I either put something in my pouch, or I took something out of my pouch and I buried it near the Seagate on the side. Then I returned with the rest of the team, and we re-entered the Seagate to come back through to where we are here now on Earth. Once on the other side and back in the dome, I remember, actually, when we were still, when I was burying that thing, I was joking around with the other teammates saying, when we get on the other side and we get done with this mission, I'm going to do this, that, the other thing, like Rocky Balboa, whatever, when he's playing champ, whatever. So anyway, once we get on the other side of the Seagate and we're back in the Dome. I remember jumping on top of my seat and raising my arms up as if I'm the champion of a race or tournament. The lab coats got pissed at me. Apparently, I purposefully went against their order. Apparently, I purposefully went against their orders. But I cannot remember exactly what it was I did that they considered wrong in that mission. The white lab coats grabbed me and another girl who had done something wrong too. I don't know what it was. They grabbed us out of our chairs, threw us on the ground, and they were kicking and screaming at us. Then they dragged us into the back, into another room, and they continued beating on us, screaming, "What did you do? What did you do?" I yelled back at them, "We did what you told us to. We only did what you told us." And then they stopped hitting on us. And I remember looking at this girl going, man, I need to remember this excuse so when I get back home with my biological mother and she's, yelling at me, I can say, but I did what you told me to. And she'll buy it, just like they did. One friend at home in my normal life noticed I was missing for 3 weeks. Every weekend, the whole lot of us would go out clubbing. There was a group of us. Am I allowed to say? I can't. We'll say northern New Jersey, okay. Out near New York City, all right. My one friend noticed that I had not shown up for 3 weeks, and I had missed another one of our friends' birthday party too, because we would throw parties. So we planned this big party. I don't show up for 3 weeks. I miss a party. When I finally did show up, I acted typically like I did on every Friday night, and she seemed shocked. She's like, "Where have you been? I haven't talked to you. I haven't seen you. You haven't called me back. You haven't texted me back." I'm like, "What are you talking about? I haven't heard from you all week. You didn't call me." So I pull out my cell phone, and we're looking through it. I don't have any calls, any texts from her. None. And then she's like, "Holly, you haven't been here in 3 weeks. None of us have seen you in 3 weeks. None of us have heard from you in 3 weeks." I was like, "What are you talking about, Danielle? I just saw you last week." And I was insistent with her. I'm like, "No, Danielle, I just saw you last week. I don't know what you're talking about." But, I believe that when I was sent on missions for long periods of time, a clone was put in place of me that went to work and went in place of me to school, and family and friends would not realize that I was gone, let alone figure out that it was a clone in my place while I was gone. Next chapter, Dolphins in my bedroom. I believe in my 20s. Oh boy, okay. I just gotten divorced and I was living in a room that was separate and at the end, that was separate from the rest of the house and at the end of the house. A night came when there was another high-ranking officer who is a half-human hybrid, entered my home. I woke up to see him standing in my bedroom. I saw his face and recognized him. I said, "You don't have to do that. I'll go with you willingly." But he scoped me anyway. On a different evening, I was taken by him again and thrown in the back of a car in the trunk. He drove down the street for a while. When the trunk of the car opened, I saw little gray aliens and I began to fight. I do not know for sure if it was real aliens or if they were trying to make me think they were aliens or if it was humans and aliens, but whatever, they injected me in the back of the skull on the right side, behind my ear and up under my skull. It hurt badly. I remember struggling and fighting. The pain was piercing. Then I was thrown back into the trunk of the car and driven home. For a good week, I remember in the mornings, especially when I woke up, I felt like I had gotten in a fight with a UFC champ. My neck and lower head throbbed in excruciating pain. It reminded me of martial arts training. The other high-ranking commander or super soldier brought me back home that night and put me back inside my bedroom, fully dressed, even with my shoes still tied on. He locked the house doors behind him. Always. I'm grateful to make sure that I was brought home safely to my grandmother and that she was safe. Next chapter, searching for dolphins on Mars. I was sent back to Mars with 2 black operations teams. We were searching for dolphins. There is water on Mars. As my team walked around the surface of Mars, it was covered with shards of rock. I approached the high mountainsides. It was beautiful, I thought, but it's definitely rocky and shardy and some big boulders. And the mountainsides and cliffs were just huge compared to what we have. At least whatever you think is the tallest mountain, double that, and that's like their mountains on Mars, to the way it looked to me. And I remember walking up to the sides of the mountain, putting my ear on them, and trying to listen for water or for sonar waves. Eventually, I did find something, and as soon as I found them, and I found where the dolphins were located, I signaled over to the other black ops teams to come over and to help me search for an entrance inside the mountain. We needed the dolphins for their sonar, either to heal our bodies or to get back home here to Earth. Next chapter, nickname of death. Another time I recall the high-ranking super soldier commander driving me home from a mission. He told me that the other super soldiers in the dumps nicknamed me Death after the Angel of Death, a Nazi scientist from World War II. From my understanding, it was because I served my teams well and apparently had no mercy as an active super soldier. The Nazi scientist is someone I nicknamed Joe the Mechanic and suffered Stockholm Syndrome over. Severe. Next chapter, Circle 9. The commander brought me into Circle 9, which is comprised of 9 powerful Satanists who perform sacrifices and summon Satan and cohorts of his who are on the same level as he to rise up from the pit, including Goetia demons. I remember them standing around in a circle wearing black hooded cloaks, but each one had a different color lining. Each person had something they were holding in their hands, but I do not remember what it was. They have a certain calling card when they want to reach you, when they're calling for you. I think I was brought in with the commander because of the missions and assignments him and I were sent on. These are powerful people. You need their permission and approval for everything you do. You have to get their permission, their consent, their blessings. That's it. So, next chapter, fragmented memories. I was in another country and had just finished a mission. I cannot give specifics except to say I was a teenager. We were sent into a war as super soldiers to drive home political agendas for those who were in power over countries. I was given orders where to go after the mission was complete. I was told to stay put and hidden at the designated place until my black ops team could come to pick me up. I found a bicycle and was riding it around the empty building trying to occupy my time. A couple days later, I saw a convoy coming towards the building. In the front vehicle, there was the other commander whom I recognized. He saw me and ran home. What? I was sent on a mission somewhere. It was in 1993. And when we were done with this mission, it was a complete genocide over there. It was just nothing but a slaughter. And when the mission was finished, I was to wait at a certain location. And while I was waiting at that location, I found an abandoned bike, and I was pedaling it around and circling around the building, trying to occupy the time to go by. And I remember the day came when the convoy came driving up to me, and it was Black Ops, and they were coming to retrieve me to take me home. And I remember the commander hanging out the window waving at me, and when they finally got there, he jumped out of the car. They barely even stopped moving, and I remember running over to him and giving him the biggest hug ever. That was a rough assignment. I was taken to an airport to be flown back to the States. It was a UN airport. As I boarded, I was the only passenger. The team had to stay in that territory. I don't know if they extracted anybody else, but they extracted me. The pilots and flight attendant greeted me as I boarded the plane. I told them that we were going to have a safe flight home, and I would make sure the plane's mechanical and electrical systems ran smoothly with my super soldier abilities. They were very nice to me, and I was exhausted. I picked a seat in the front, reclined back, and went to sleep for the whole plane ride. I can remote view and do all of that stuff while my body sleeps, and I know how a plane should work, so that's what I did. And I got back home. I don't like, guys, how I'm feeling right now. I don't think I should have had that one chapter in this book. I don't think I should have read it. I think people might get mad at me. Next chapter, Bimini's, training with dolphins. I was sent off to a dam that was partially above the ocean waves, but it went down below the sea level. So there's a dam. It's partially above the waves, but it's mainly underneath the waves and down on the ocean floor. When I arrived, sadly, I had to sit next to a female soldier I was forced to fight earlier when we were younger. When I went looking for the entrance into the Bimini Dam, she said to me, "How do you know I'm not going to try to kill you for what you did to me?" I looked at her and replied in laughter, "Try it and we'll find out." Once in the dam, I was trained to work with dolphins. I had a lot of fun doing this. The dolphins and I had a fondness for each other. I felt lighthearted when around them. I thought the instructors were a little too easygoing and not insightful during the training. When that female super soldier started with me again, I confronted her without any reservations. It upset the instructors. The dolphins were in a frenzy, and I got kicked out. But I wasn't having it. I wasn't letting her do it anymore. I was sick and tired of it. Next part of this is the secret space program. 46. Boy, I can't wait till this is over. This is rough getting through this. Secret space program. So searching for dolphins on Mars, that should have been under the secret space program. I'm going to have to go back through this. Okay, Mars. As children, we were taken to Mars and we spent a lot of time up there. On Mars, the mountains are bigger than the ones on Earth. The ground is covered with shards of rock and very dry, but also with very big boulders. The surface of Mars has purple brown, and red light colors. The sky is dark and purplish. Inside the mountains are the military installation where they kept us kids. One day, one of the elites, which is a fallen angel, excuse me, I take that back. One day, one of the entities, not elites, entities, which is a fallen angel, on Mars, brought me outside, and we were sitting next to a body of water. As we sat upon a big rock next to the water's edge, the entity and I were talking. My memory is fuzzy, but the entity was a big purplish green colored blob looking thing. They're not exactly easy on the eyes, okay? So anyway, it was nice to me. While I was talking, I asked it about God, and it laughed gently and replied, well, that is another topic, and blah, blah. It began to answer me, but of course, sidetrack. At the end of our conversation, I do remember it asking me if I wanted to stay there or go home. I told it that I missed Grandma and Papa, and I wanted to return back to Earth. It said that was fine, but I needed to go back inside and tell the rest of the children goodbye before I left. Mars was my favorite planet, and I loved it there. I liked Mars a lot. Okay, next chapter. I have to get my screens right. Next chapter, Saturn's with reptilians. I hated Saturn. Hated it. I was about 6 years old when we were sent there. I remember it looked gray and dismal. There were reptilians that were half snake on the bottom and half human on top. They smelled really, really bad. We children were split up. I was brought to a part of Saturn that was set up to look like my house on Earth. They even had a bedroom that was an exact replica as my bedroom at home. Same toys, same wallpaper, same everything. While I was inside their made-up house and bedroom for me, I would play with my toys, and the reptilians would watch me like a hawk. They brought me outside one day to rejoin the other children. We were brought to a tree. In the tree were people hanging, as if they were lynched by cables. And they were dead, and their legs were swollen due to all the blood flowing down to their feet and hands. Somehow the reptilians used this as a weapon. They loved and romanticized blood and death. When I came back to Earth, I lost my speaking abilities. I remember my grandmother having to help me speak correctly and pronounce my words. I would say hold instead of hold. Hold this instead of hold this. My grandmother was very concerned for me. My papa put up a tire swing underneath a tree for me, but when I would go outside, I could not bring myself to go near the tree nor the tire swing, because it would remind me of the trees on Saturn with the dead people hanging from them. When my grandmother asked me what was wrong, I told her Aunt Laura and other people were hanging from that tree and they were dead with swollen bodies. I can't. My grandmother had Papa take down the swing. Next chapter, spiders on Saturn's moon. As super soldiers in the SSP, we were taken to the moon of Saturn. I was on a team of about 7 soldiers, I guess. We were taken there on a mission. The installation we were housed was underground. The day came when we had to go onto the surface of the moon, circling around Saturn. We were dressed in full gear and strapped with advanced weapons that are not here on Earth. The team and I left the installation and went on the hunt for these spiders that were beige-colored with green Christmas tree-shaped marks on their backs. Their bodies were about 2 feet in size and larger, not including their leg span, and they only got bigger. The spider's legs were similar to Alaskan king crab legs from the oceans on Earth. They were strong and mean critters. I hated spiders personally and looked forward to killing them. My team and I came upon a valley, and we had to enter it. There were at least 2 soldiers. We go walking into it. We're on the surface. We're looking for these spiders. We come to this part where there's like a valley that slopes down. There's a few soldiers in front of me. We're kind of spread out. All of a sudden, we hear this weird noise, and out of nowhere, there's just these massive amounts of spiders running towards us and jumping on top of each other to run towards us. And you just see them come over the banks. They take out the first super soldier that's in front of me. They overrun him, take him down. We were trying to shoot them. But the weapons we had, it seemed like every 5th they would have to take 5 bullets to die. That's not good enough. And you know how many of them there are? So 5 bullets for one of them. It's a losing battle. You may as well not even show up. So our weapons were no match at all for them. So the spiders take down the first soldier. I see them take down the second soldier, and all of a sudden they overrun me and I'm down. So they took down our whole team. That's the last thing I remember. They just crawled all over me, and it was so gross. Their legs, all over me, and they got in my mouth, like their legs in my mouth, and just, The next thing I remember, I wake up in a cave, and it looked like I just had long johns on. And I wake up in this cave, and it looked like there were tentacles hanging down from the ceiling, and it had a bad stench. And I looked around, and there were sporadic spiders just sleeping off in the corners, whether they were half dead or really sleeping, or who knows. But I woke up, and I retrieved this briefcase. I get a hold of this briefcase, and I remember trying to walk out past these spiders and be quiet and get out of this cave and get myself back to the military base where all the other super soldiers were. Next chapter. There was a girl in particular that I recall from the SSP. A team of us soldiers. We were sent off planet. We were dressed in gear with a helmet that had a face mask, and we entered a room where there were seats. This room is a portal and uses advanced alien technology to transport us through space. We were told to sit down and close our eyes until the countdown finished. If we opened our eyes during the 10-second countdown or so, we would go blind. There was a young girl to my left and an older man to her left. On my right, there were more soldiers. We were instructed to close our eyes, and the countdown commenced. The little girl next to me opened her eyes partway through, and she began to shriek in pain. Falling on the floor, she falls on the floor from her chair. I keep my eyes closed, and I reach my arm down, and I'm trying to grab her up off the floor and keep my eyes closed while feeling for her to grab her, but stay in my chair. The soldier to her left grabbed a hold of her and tried to hold her as tight as he could because she was writhing in pain from her eyes being burned. She obviously went blind. I do not know what happened to her after this mission. I never saw her again. I remember they used to joke around with me about this too, because I would hold my eyes closed longer than they told me to. And I remember getting teased by the other soldiers, but I just did not want to go blind. I was terrified of going blind. So, next chapter, Team Space. A time-space portal was open in my bedroom. I was brought on a 20-year journey in outer space. I was returned through that specific portal. When they brought me back, the body I returned to was my own, but still the body of a child. So like when you do 20 and back, so they take you out at this second, 2 seconds from now passes, they use that same time-space bubble to bring you back in. So when they bring you back in, you're only 2 seconds older, but you're still at the same age you were, but you've just lived 20 years out in Mars with a whole bunch of other people. Try age regression. So they bring you back and you're returned to your own body, but you're still the body of a child. I had already grown up, but internally and externally, I don't know. I don't want to read the rest of that. I was with a team from the DUMS aboard an aircraft in the SSP. All of us would get along famously or argue like brothers and sisters. We were all in our 20s at this time, but when we were younger, we were programmed together. We could send each other telepathic messages, and the connection was so strong between all of us that we could automatically sense when something was wrong or right with another person on the team. We spent a lot of time together, and I miss them greatly. The commander would bring me blue juice from the cafeteria and leave it at my station. Blue juice was always my favorite flavor. He was always thinking of his team members. I often got the team laughing at me. For example, one time we had holographic jumpsuits. I turned mine into bright rainbow colors that shined brightly. Everyone laughed and told me the enemy would see me coming and blast me out of the sky to kingdom come. One time we opened a portal inside the aircraft, which enabled us to see out our outside surroundings. I remember the sky was dark, but the stars and planets were brilliantly bright. We went to another galaxy and traveled around space. We also traveled to the moon of Earth. On the dark side of the moon, there is a mechanism in the shape of a triangle that can move the moon in the sky, as well as rotate the moon in the sky. The commander and another female soldier and I were operating the triangle mechanism while I was terraforming an aircraft to get us off the moon and back up to our main ship. If I remember certain elements from the periodic table, I could shape and form them into whatever I needed or wanted. Next chapter, Sirius B. I was sent to Sirius B in the Orion Belt star constellation. I remember it. I worked for the Elohim, which is a type of fallen angel. This term does not refer to our creator. They showed me things, and I remember working their technology. I cannot give you more detail than that. A day came when I made a present for them. They were nice to me. Easy to work for, I guess. When I handed it to them, they looked baffled. I said it was a gift and to please take it. They didn't know what a gift was. Next chapter, jumping into the night. I had to go on a mission with a different super soldier than I was used to being partnered with. He was the boy who Okay, that needs to be taken out. I don't know why that would even be in there. At the time of the mission, I'm going to take this down and I'm going to put up my rough draft. What page am I on? Alright, I got 3 more pages. Alright, guys, I'm going to take down the edited version and I'm going to put back up. I'm going to leave up my rough draft of the book. I should, like, do that right this second. Alright, so we were sent on, there's a couple of different things here. So I was sent on this one. I was sent on a mission. And I'm with a bunch of super soldiers. And I'm with this other high-ranking super soldier, and we go walking up to this airplane, or not even an airplane, I take that back, aircraft. We go walking up to this aircraft, and I see these 2 super soldiers there to greet us. And there's the pilot, who I leave nameless. And I take one look at the pilot, and I see he's only got 2 stars on his lapel. And I look at him, I'm like, only 2 stars? We're the government. What happened to 4 stars? And the high-ranking soldier I was with just turned around and was like, gave me this look like, don't start, Holly, don't start. I'm going to take a 2-second break and I'm going to sit here with you guys while I do it. I need to edit this video, or I need to take this video down. Excuse me, I gotta take care of this. It's not, I can't. This has to come down. Alright, where'd it go? Book. Alright, the rough draft kind of stinks, but I can't leave the final version up. Whatever, just get out of there. Give me this part. This part. Delete section. Yes. Publish. I have to update my website anyway with like a whole bunch, like 10 more drawings and descriptions. So I'm taking down the final version. I'm leaving up my rough draft, which probably doesn't make any sense, but I'm putting back up the rough draft, and we'll go with that from now on. I feel better with that happening. Even though it's not as well polished as the edited version, I'm going to go with the rough draft. Is that it? No. Go back. I gotta take that all down. This has to go down. Where'd it go? Excuse me, guys. So I actually duplicate it. Yes, right there. But this I want to take out. Delete. Yes. Delete. Yes. Now I want you published. Okay. This is, alright. Sorry to do this to you guys. File coming soon. Okay, so add. That is downloads. Yes. That's in Word format, and then I will transition it to PDF format, and then I will put that PDF up, but it will be the rough draft of my book, not the final edited version. Well, not the edited version. Sorry about that. Done. Publish. Okay, sorry about that, guys. I don't mean to be rude. If anybody's offended what I just did, I apologize, but just something's coming over me and I have to deal with it. Okay, I love you, Tina. I hope you have a good day, Rosalind. Wild-hearted, it's great to see you. Chris, Andrew, Tina, Trunk. Sorry I didn't answer before, Trunk. WP. I'm trying to stay on topic. This is like one of the worst recordings ever. Lily, I meant to call you back today. I've been dying to talk to you, Lily. Joanne, it's great to see you. Carrie, Joanne, if I'm forgetting anyone, please forgive me. Louis, Anna, I love you guys very much. Okay, so let me get back to reading the rest of this. Okay, I feel a little bit of pressure come off of me now. I think I made a good decision to do that. I feel a little bit better. So, alright, back to reading my autobiography. I wanted this to be a better recording, but I'm doing the best I can. This part is just not easy for me, so. Alright. Ready? Part like umpteen. Thrown from an airplane. The other soldiers and I were sent on a mission. Something went wrong. I found myself aboard an airplane and the bad guys had us. I remember the bad guys standing over us with pointed weapons. To my left was a soldier being held down on the ground. There was another soldier to my right being strong-armed. I'm being held down, and I believe there's another soldier in front of me that's captured by the bad guys. The guy to my left of me, he's being held down on the ground. He's fired upon and shot in the gut. So he's down. The guy in front of me, the bad guys in front of me had a super soldier, my teammate, who is on the cover of my autobiography. They take him and they throw him out of the airplane. So I got infuriated and I broke loose of the bad guys trying to hold me down. I broke loose of them and I went charging towards the door. And once I got to the door, I jumped out. I was going either way. They were going to throw me out either way, shoot me, kill me, whatever. So once I saw them throw him out, I went out of the plane on my own. And he went crashing down through the trees and hit the ground. And I followed suit and I hit the ground. We both had a death experience, and we both met Yeshua and Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. My teammate and I were walking down a dark tunnel, and then we entered a large room where Yeshua and Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh sat on their thrones. Yeshua Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh began talking to the other super soldier about his life. And he was giving the other soldier guidance and telling my teammate what to expect in life. Then Yeshua turned to me and said, "You and I are going to get married, and it will end all of this." I responded back, "Well, then let's just get married now and be done with this mess." He said, "Not yet. Not yet." Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh and Yeshua told us both that we would have to return to our lives. My teammate and I began walking back the way we came. I looked at him and I said, "Do you know who that?" I looked at my teammate and I stopped and I paused. I even sat down and I said to him, I said, "Do you know who that just was?" That was Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. Like, do you know who that we were just talking to? Like, next thing I know, we came back to life. Next chapter, moonwalk. Oh my goodness. Funny. I was told by my teammate who I was in the dumps with that I tried to escape the dumps yet again. He said that Michael Jackson got his moonwalk from me. I highly doubt it, but just listen to the story. The white lab coats had untied me or thought that I was docile enough to untie me and were moving me around into another room through the dumps. Well, they left me alone for a few moments. And when the lab coats went out of the hallway and left me there, the other soldiers could still see me from where they were tied down in their rooms. So I saw an opportunity and made my move. And the way I had maneuvered my body, it looked like I was walking forward, but really moving backward through the door. I escaped and made a run for it. They told me I made it all the way to the sea. So the way I tripped the lasers and everybody else was, you know, that moonwalk. It looks like he's walking forward, but really he's moving backward. It was like that, right? I don't know. So anyway, they told me that I went to the sea. I think I went in a different direction. My teammate also told me that the character of Sarah O'Connor from the movies Terminator was based off me when I was active. And the character Blade is based off of him. These superhero movies are based off of what we super soldiers accomplished on missions, not from creative people who just happen to think of it off the top of their heads. Hollywood makes money off of what we did. It makes me mad that they do not give us the revenue because we were the ones to suffer so they could have entertainment. Feather footing at home. Now, okay. I'm glad this is my first autobiography. I'm going to pause for a second. I'm glad this is my first autobiography. Well, it's the only autobiography. But, oh wow, I just see so much progress that I've made since I began writing this until here I am now. So there's room for a lot of correction, and there's room for even more explanation, and there's room to say, hey, I was stuck in this part of my journey, but now through learning and time I'm over here, and this is what I was incorrect about, but here's what I've corrected about myself, and here's the place I'm at now. So forgive me if some of this stuff is a little bit off, but it's the best of my ability. I can't wait for dinner time. I'm already starving. I got 10 minutes. I better wrap this up. Feather-footing it home. Next chapter. From what I recall, I escaped a dump by myself. Okay, this is what I remember. This is not what I'm told. I hope you guys don't mind that I just put that little section, those two little sections in there stating what other soldiers said to me and what they remember about me, because I thought it was kind of cute. And no offense, my whole book is dismal. You read it and you walk away feeling demonically oppressed. It's a very heavy book. It's filled with my experiences of going through these things. So it's not easy at all. But I thought those were just little cute things to brighten up the mood, but I guess they kind of weren't bright enough. Okay, from what I recall, I escaped a dump by myself. The dump was in the desert, so I found myself a medicine man. When I got to a safe place away from the dumps, I found a medicine man who brought me into a sweat tent away from the rest of his tribe. He had one of the other Indians with him. The medicine man told him that I was hurting very bad and to watch out for me. The medicine man kept me calm. He fed me. He healed my wounded body. I told him I needed to go home. I have to go home. After some time, the medicine man could do no more for me. He left me in the sweat tent and stepped outside by a fire a little distance away in what looked like a rocking chair while he played an instrument resembling a flute. I awoke in the sweat and felt great. I exited the tent in one step. It seemed like I opened the tent, the doors to the tent, the flap to the tent, and it seemed in one step I was on the opposite side of the camp. Now facing the tent that I just stepped out of, but 15 feet away from the tent itself. And I look over and I see the medicine man sitting there. And I hear this noise, and I just see him point, and when he pointed, I was off. I saw a far-off vision of Far Hills, New Jersey, where I lived with my grandparents. I nodded my head at him, but I feather-footed all the way home, back home. It felt like I was dancing between the light and dark. If someone looked at me, I slowed down to a slow walk, but when they looked away, I blasted off again like a bolt of lightning. When I arrived, there was a clone in my place sleeping in my bed. I got rid of the clone and buried it in the woods where no one would find it. Then I went back inside, so relieved to be back home again, returning to live my normal life. Pulling apart the airplane. Next chapter. I was sent on a mission alone. The airplane I was on was filled with different politicians from around the world. I was given instructions of what to do. I was seated in the back of the plane and purposefully fell asleep once we had been in the air for a while. I left my body, walked down the aisles and into the cockpit where the co-pilot and pilot were seated. I went to the dashboard of the plane and started to dismantle it, ripping apart wires and disconnecting all the plane's mechanical system. The airplane began to shake, alarms began to sound, and oxygen masks fell from the compartments above to the passengers. I made the airplane crash because the orders were not to let the politicians make it back home alive. Once the plane went down, I waited by the wreckage expecting the Black Ops team to retrieve me. When I saw the convoy coming, I got excited. I thought it was my Black Ops team coming to retrieve me. So I came out of hiding, but to my distress, it was not my Black Ops team, but rather the bad guys. And I was trying to avoid them. They saw me and captured me. I was thrown into their vehicle where they had me bound up. I heard the driver and passenger talking and joking around and understood that I heard them joking and talking. It sounded like they were hive mind minions. They took me to a military facility. I don't remember after that. I want to rearrange this a little bit, but I think this is when it comes in, if my memories aren't all clashing together. A huge German soldier in garb entered the room. He had 2 more people with him, dressed in like soldier fatigue or like nurses' outfits type thing. He told me that he was going to erase my mind. I responded, "You better make sure I don't remember, because if I do, it'll kill me and I'll come back for you." They performed electric shock on me and it erased most of my memory bank. Thanks to Jesus, when I did start remembering what happened to me in my life, it did not kill me. It can be grueling to remember MK Ultra and Super Soldier programs, but I testify the grace of God is more than enough. Being released, next chapter. I was released by the main Nazi scientist who I had Stockholm Syndrome over. An Astroworld event took place over a 3-week period. At night, this Nazi would come to me, pull me out of my body, and bring me to another place. We were in a yellow school bus, as strange as that sounds. He was releasing me and one other super soldier, a blonde girl I mentioned earlier. For a few weeks, I was put through trauma-based torture techniques again. It seemed like he was reprogramming me. Then in the last week, inside the yellow school bus, I sat across the table filled with weapons. He sat across the other side from me. We sat at a table that was filled with weapons. He had allowed another super soldier to go. He let her go. He released her. She never even said goodbye, and I even considered her a friend. Then the Nazi scientist began talking to me, and I told him I did not want to leave. He told me I had to, and that if I came back, they would kill me. When I went to leave the yellow school bus, I turned back around and gave him a hug goodbye. I walked outside, and I decided to follow a ministry. He continued to watch me for weeks to come, and I counted on seeing him. I had separation anxiety, so this was hard for me. At that point, I accepted YESHUA as my Savior through the ministry I started following. I rededicated myself. Rededication is more the appropriate word. One day I noticed that he was no longer watching me and that he left. I began to feel okay being released from the MK Ultra Super Soldier projects. I began to enjoy my new life and felt free once again. I stayed away as he instructed me to do. I want to live. I like this one. I like this chapter. Chapter. Westminster, Colorado. All right. I went to Westminster, Colorado in December 2011 on vacation because I was considering to move out there. And I was going to check out the spot that I was planning to live. It was funny because when I flew into the Denver, Colorado airport, I looked like a complete tourist. I was snapping photos of every mural I could. Many odd things happened to me while I was out there. One night, my old boss and good friend from AT&T, who happened to live... I went out to visit my friend and ex-boss from AT&T. He liked a girl at the Hooters bar. So, my sole aim was the bar. So, we were at this Hooters one night. And we're sitting at the bar with a bunch of people shooting the breeze, shooting shots. So I told my boss and friend, I'll be right back. I need to use the ladies' room. So I get up and head for the powder room. When I get there, to the left is the woman's entrance and to the right is the men's entrance. So as I'm approaching it, And just before I go to make a left to turn into the women's bathroom, a blonde-headed guy comes out of the men's bathroom, and without hesitation whatsoever, "Oh, hi, Holly, I'm so-and-so." And, "Oh, hi, Holly, I'm so-and-so." His hand is out. Next thing you know, I stick my hand out, and he's putting his hand in mine, and we're shaking, right? He had blonde hair with it tied back. He wore a nice brown blazer jacket, had shoulder pads, elbow pads, very nicely dressed. He had a big smile on his face. "Hello, Holly, I'm so-and-so." And by that point, his hand is in mine, and I'm scoped. So I became compliant. Scopolamine can be administered transdermal. And it does make a person very compliant and very, very truthful. It puts a person in an altered state of mind. So he went on to say, "How are you? I'm so-and-so," and blah, blah, blah. I started to joke around with him, saying men's bathrooms are always cleaner than the ladies' rooms. There's never a line, and you're always bound to meet a hottie, too. Hottie, meaning, a gorgeous guy, a cute guy. He asked me if I would like to join him, so I followed him into the men's room. See what I mean about compliant? Once we were inside, the counter with sinks was to my left. Then after that, there were like 3 stalls, and the 4th stall in the way, way back was for handicap. To my right side was mirrors, and it was a wall, just a wall. There were 2 men wearing black jackets standing at the sinks with their back to me and heads down so I could not see their faces in the mirror. So I follow this blonde-headed guy into the bathroom. There are the 2 other dark-headed guys with their heads down. I can't see who they are. And this blonde-headed guy started talking to me. And he says to me something to the effect of, "Don't you remember me? Don't you remember the kids in a cage?" And at this time, one guy at the sink turns around and he gives me a big shot of something, and I recognized him. And I kept talking, and then the 3rd guy, they had asked me, they had said, "Holly, we're going to come forward to the public. We're going to go on TV, tell everybody what we're doing. What do you want to do?" I'm like, "I don't want to, you're not going to get me on TV. I don't want to do that." And so they asked me, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I didn't have that much knowledge of the Holy Bible, but I read something about the 144,000 seals. So I said to them, "Well, I want to be a SEAL. There's Navy SEALs. Well, I want to be a SEAL to God. I want to be one of those 144,000 SEALs because it sounds like a Navy SEAL to me, and I want to be that." So at this time, the 3rd soldier turns around, and I recognized him off the bat, and he turns around and he says something to me like, total wise ass. "Well, if you love God so much, why don't you just marry him?" So this was in 2011. So, so the 4 of us finished talking, and the commander walks me to the back of the men's room. Not the blonde-headed guy that walked me in, but now the commander. He walks me to the back of the men's bathroom, to the very last stall, the handicap stall, and we walk in, and we're standing in the stall, and again, this is the again part, the smell. I look at him, and I'm like, "Boy, you smell really good." And just as I'm smelling and saying that, I just collapse, and he catches me. So it's something about the smell, right? So I collapse. He had to have used advanced technology, because the next thing I know is we are on the opposite side of the wall in the men's bathroom. But on the opposite side of the wall of the men's bathroom is the women's bathroom. Totally same layout, just opposite. So now we're on the opposite side of the wall in the women's bathroom in that handicap stall. And I'm sitting on the toilet and I just hear, "Oh my God, do you know who that is?" And I hear, "Shh, she's going to hear you." And I start to come to, and the commander is kneeling next to me, and then I hear, "Holly, I'm so sorry." And I'm like still groggy, and he gets up and leaves. So a few moments later, I come out of this fog. And stand up from the toilet. I come out of the stall. I'm thinking to myself, what just happened? And I go walking through the women's bathroom to go to the entrance to get out. And I get out and I'm there face to face with the men's bathroom stall. And I'm like this close to going in, and I hesitate and I stop myself because I think, okay, I'll get kicked out. This is not New Jersey where I can get away with murder. I'll get kicked out here in Colorado. So I go over to the bar. I grab my cigarettes. I tell my boss, I'm going to go outside and have a butt. I kid you not, guys. I walked all through that Hooters, the restaurant. I walked all through the back patio. I walked outside in the parking lot looking for that blonde-haired man. I come right back in the Hooters and I go charging right back up to that men's bathroom door, and I'm about to go in again, and I stop. That was the strangest thing. That was the strangest thing. So I went back and I rejoined my boss at the bar. But I'll tell you, as I sat at that bar in Hooters, now what was I, 38, 39? Well, it was 2011, no. So I was 37. So I was about 37 years old. And I hadn't thought about the kids in the cage. So when I rejoined Jeff, my AT&T boss and my friend, when I rejoined him and his friends at the bar, I sat down. I was 37 years old, and it was the first time, and I couldn't tell, 2 decades, or at least a decade and a half, at least, that I had thought about those kids in a cage. How do you forget something like that? I would have never, I sat at that bar just thinking about those kids in a cage and remembering my own personal experiences. It took me some time after that to really come to terms and get right. So this is where we are here in my autobiography. So these 3 soldiers that approached me, I did recognize them, not at the time, but you're going to have to tune in for the rest of my autobiography. At this time, I am going to conclude this broadcast because I'm solely trying to focus on my autobiography and get a recording so that you guys can listen back to it and play it back and just listen to the book itself. Thank you for joining me. I really, really appreciate it a lot, and I hope that you guys have a beautiful weekend. The last part, the third part and last part is When Two Worlds Collide, my normal life and my super soldier life, my awakening and deprogramming. So that part of my autobiography picks up from the year about 2013. So it picks up 8 years ago, and it'll bring you, I can't wait for this part, 2013 until 2019. So, all right, guys, I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you have a very beautiful weekend. I will be back to hang out with you guys. I hope to come back to do a panel this evening. But yeah, I'm going to take a break and then return some phone calls, and I will see you guys later. I love you. Thanks for joining me, and excuse me for shifting in my seat and not being able to sit still. But the next part is my favorite part because Yeshua is my favorite topic to talk about. So I will see you guys later. Thanks for joining me. I love you. Bye.